Ronak will start the session. Participants will join. All right. Can you hear me, Ronak?
Yes, I hear you. Tell me, you will start in 5 minutes?
No, no, we'll start the session now. Okay. Our participants will join. Okay.
So we should start now.
Yes, yes, of course. So good morning. Hello, everyone. Salam alaikum. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today we are here to talk about, of course, Windows Virtual Desktop, and we'll be discussing how we can enable secure remote work and how it can help your employees work securely from anywhere with cloud and hybrid cloud-based virtual desktop infrastructure. My name is Sri Vishnu Katari. I am the commercial executive for Microsoft International Information Technology in Oman. And with that, without in the interest of the time, I leave it to Ronak, our product expert, who will take it over the session. As a reminder, this is a live session, so please be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A window. And please, I think there is an option to raise your hand where we can, allow the participant to raise the questions if you'd like to have a clarification in between the session. You're most welcome. Ronak?
Thank you, Sri Vishnu, for the short introduction. Hello, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. My name is Ronak. I will be walking you through the Windows Virtual Desktop webinar. It's going to be a quick walkthrough where we will be just summarizing the advantages and the reasons that are valid or that are the most precise ones why you should think of adapting to the Windows Virtual Desktop in your environment. uh, I am sharing my screen now and I hope that becomes visible to you. Guys, while we talk about Windows Virtual Desktop in our environment, or when we even think of adopting any cloud product in our enterprise IT infrastructure, it is always a question of performance, of security, of vulnerability that comes into our mind before having the execution of the same done. Today, when we are talking about the modern IT landscape that we have, yes. Sorry, I think is my voice interrupting, guys? Vishnu, my voice is clear.
Absolutely clear, Ronak. Please carry.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, so sorry, I think I thought my voice was disruptive. Okay. So when I talk about Windows Virtual Desktop, or when we talk about the modern IT landscape that we have today, we have been trying to work remotely and at the same time even trying to satisfy our users to perform the best possible way where they are, and to make sure that we are able to meet their needs of IT requirements for them to be productive. In the current modern IT landscape, it is very difficult to expect that every user from home is going to have that powerful laptop or a device from where they can serve every single requirement that we expect them to. Let's say, for example, I have a couple of users in my environment who are working on some really high or really heavy graphic intensive units, and they need some, maybe say 16 gigs of RAM, or maybe they need some extremely heavy hardware to perform their activities. I cannot expect my user to have that particular hardware at home or at his place from where he can continue serving those particular services. That is the time when we try to satisfy their need of an instance also remotely, and that is where Windows Virtual Desktop comes into the picture. It has always been a question whether you should adapt to Windows Virtual Desktop or not, considering the fact that it is on the cloud and we might not have a local data center available, and all our information will be synchronizing to cloud, which I don't want. Okay, to answer this, I would say that, how if I tell you that it is a myth that you will be storing all your data on the cloud and only then it will be accessible? Why I am saying so? Because why I am saying so? Because when we are actually talking about the Windows Virtual Desktop on that particular environment, all my data will be lying in the on-premise, and while it is lying on-premise, it will be accessed through the cloud directly, meaning my data, my information, and every single aspect that I have in my environment is something which will be lying in the local data center inside my office, from where I am actually giving the access to the users. It will be as good as the user connecting through the VPN in my environment and then accessing the resources. Having Windows Virtual Desktop doesn't all the time mean that, or having let me say, an instance in the cloud doesn't all the time mean that you're saving the data on those instances. It is your instance itself which is going to run in the cloud, but with all your data placed on premise. Keeping this in mind, Microsoft has been leveraging every single customer to use WVD. When we talk about Windows Virtual Desktop, it is important to understand the advantages that it might give us, the cost effectiveness that it might give us, and the kind of services that Windows Virtual Desktop might allow us to cater. WVD as a solution today is the one which is something going to be the most powerful solution to have my workforce perform their activity in the most efficient manner over the cloud. What are the advantages of Windows Virtual Desktop? First of all, it is a complete suite of collaboration which includes four different components. Number one, it includes your Windows 10 multi-session operating system. It is a combination of your Microsoft Office 365 Pro Plus suite, which is going to give you all the application access. It is the cloud version of your on-premise RDS services. When I say on-premise RDS services, what I am talking over here is the typical TS web that we have. It also gives me the option to scale up and scale down my environment in minutes. When I say in minutes, I actually mean to upscale or downscale in just no time. The whole idea behind the design of Windows Virtual Desktop is to bring the platform, uh, you can say, in between your server and the client operating system. So till now, whatever we were using on our RDS services are the ones which you will now use on the Windows 10 machine. Windows 10 machines today are the ones which are single version operating systems. They are supporting Office 365, and they are operating systems which are updated semi-annually. Now, When I talk about the WVD session, it is for the first time that a client operating system is going to serve the functionality of a Windows server by being multi-session. So you can have one Windows 10 instance in the cloud, which is going to allow you to connect multiple users and have their own profiles accessed to perform the relevant task in their environment. The entire suite of WVD is something which comes as a collaboration from your Azure, controlled with your Microsoft Intune, and delivered using WVD. Let's take an example. So you have your WVD, which can be implemented with your Microsoft 365 suite, that is with conditional access, with a multi-factor authentication, and a role-based access control to enhance the security. Next, I can have my WVD controlled using Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure has more than 90 plus offerings for compliance to make sure that your data is completely secured in the Azure data centers. More than 3,500 global cybersecurity solutions and cybersecurity experts to serve the uh, factors of vulnerability, and additional investments that Microsoft makes by every passing month, by every passing year, just in order to make sure that the customer's information and data is secured in the cloud. And when you have both of these services deployed in your environment, you can then have it delivered using your Windows virtual desktop. Currently, when we talk about WVD solution, let's say around, you can say, 8 or 10 months back, it was available in only certain data centers of Microsoft Azure. Thanks to the pandemic, it is something which is now available across the globe in almost every data center of Microsoft Azure. When we talk about the instances that we deploy in cloud, this is something similar to Citrix and the tie-up that Microsoft Azure had with Citrix over the past few years. Over here, there will be three major factors that we will have to consider. The first one would be the cost. The second one would be security. And the third one, the major one, would be the new use cases. When I talk about the cost factor, we would want to evaluate the cost factor from the aspects of the services that we deploy. I will shortly brief you about how the entire security suite can be deployed with WVD with negligible cost. But as we discussed the aspects that security can be implemented using Microsoft 365 and Azure and then delivered using Windows Virtual Desktop. This as a suite has the biggest use case of what we have been doing today. So probably when I deploy Windows Virtual Desktop, I will first consider it with RDS that we had on premise. When we had RDS on premise, I used to deploy it only for selective users and for selective, workforce. Considering a fact that it is going to be complex, it is something which is going to be costly, and etc. Today, Windows Virtual Desktop is scalable from compute as low as 750 MB of RAM right up till 16 GB, 32 GB, 64 GB, depending all on my requirement. Hence, WVD is something which is the most versatile connectivity solution that you can have to work remotely. And when it comes to cost, Microsoft has minimized the cost by at least 35 to 40% as compared to your cost on premise, making it easy for all the organizations to adapt to it so that they can use it more efficiently. The biggest reason why the cost would come down is that your Windows 10 is multi-session. So you have one license in the enterprise operating system, which is going to allow multiple users to connect. Another reason how the cost for this particular solution has come down is that most of the Microsoft 365 customers are eligible to use WVD without an additional cost. Meaning, any customer who already has an E3 license, who already has an E5 license, or any of the education licenses, or even your on-prem RDS client access licenses that you have procured, you can redeem them all across the Windows Virtual Desktop solution to be used in the cloud. It is supported on your IoT devices. It is supported on Linux as well. And it is coming up with Linux SDK to be deployed on another segment of non-Microsoft operating systems altogether to make sure that the entire ecosystem of accessing WVD becomes universal and you can access it from any operating system platform. So if at all my organization is offering Windows Virtual Desktop, I can access my corporate resources on my Android devices, on my Windows devices, on an HTML browser on any other device, on an iOS, on Linux operating systems, on thin clients, and a lot many more. It is the most benefited solution that we might implement for the first line workers, because giving the first line workers the hardware or the necessary device becomes a really cost intensive solution for any organization. It's better to simply spin up a compute in my Windows Virtual Desktop and ask the user to access the same. So the whole logic of WVD says that your data remains on premise. It's mapped securely based on your IPsec tunnel or your site to site configuration based on some other encryption that you might define. It is getting connected to the cloud. From the cloud, the user will access the instance. After accessing the instance, user will be given the necessary permissions to perform their relevant task. Once the task is performed, once the information is completely accessed, the session will be closed. User will not be allowed to pull out any data of that cloud session. It's only take the instance, work, and simply release. It has new capabilities which are collaborating with other operating system platforms in order to make sure that users are not left dissatisfied on any specific service. In fact, sorry, in fact, when you want to use Microsoft Teams as a unified communication application or any other meeting solution, you need not even install it on your system. You can ask your WVD instance to directly access your local device hardware like the mic and the speaker in order to have the communication driven from that instance. It is that powerful. Windows Virtual Desktop in today's date is the best virtualized Windows experience. Cheapest because you can use your existing licenses and at the same time you have one session controlling multiple user instances from anywhere. Reason being, it is supported on cross platform scenarios. You can access it from anywhere and everywhere on any device, may that be laptop, desktop, tablet, or a mobile device. Now, while we are actually talking about this particular solution of WVD, it is not that you are limited to access it on the Microsoft platform itself. WVD has its own level of collaboration with Citrix and VMware Horizon to offer you a cross-platform experience as well. What do I mean by a cross-platform session? Prior to WVD, Microsoft had marketed a lot about its partnership with Citrix to provide applications over the cloud, to provide app virtualization and desktop virtualization over the cloud. And there were also organizations who had adapted to the same. Today, after WVD coming up so aggressively and bringing down the cost, of course, as compared to Citrix, considerably down as compared to Citrix, there are customers who wish to migrate from Citrix to the WVD environment. There are customers who wish to migrate from their on-premise to their Azure environment. And when some kind of migrations like these need to be done on WVD, it is also something which can be driven seamlessly. So moving your native applications from an on-premise solution or from a Citrix environment to WVD is also something which is achievable with considerably less efforts. I would not say no efforts, but with less efforts. Support for thin clients, as I told you, Windows 10 IoT Enterprise and Linux SDK, that is Ubuntu based operating system, is what is supported. One of the features that WVD gives you is a dynamic resolution. So for example, I have opened a WVD session in my environment, and that WVD session is what I have opened on my laptop. In that case, my resolution will be full screen. But if I try to restore that particular session, the window will get adjusted accordingly. If I resize it again, it is going to get adjusted accordingly. Maybe if I'm trying to cascade the windows and access it the way I might do on a mobile device in a vertical resolution, it is something which is again easily achievable. So that is a dynamic resolution, making sure that the user experience is not compromised by any means while accessing those resources on any type of a device. You can connect multiple monitors with your WVD session to project it or probably to duplicate the displays. And the audio video experience, as I told you, of Microsoft Teams on this platform itself is one another attractive feature which customers have been cherishing the most by after the implementation of WVD. So I don't need to actually implement Teams on my machine. It can directly come through my WVD session, and the communication can directly happen all over the cloud itself. I can simply just access it and use it. While WVD initially was a new product, there were a couple of glitches that end users pointed out which were compromising the experience of the user. When I say compromising the experience of the user, what I mean over here is, let's say you are trying to have a video playback, then the benchmarking used to show something that you see on your left side where the total frames per second that were being processed were not more than 11 or 12 frames per second, which have now been enhanced to nearly 4 times, making it nearly 40 frames per second, enhancing your complete experience of accessing the video over your virtual instance that you are accessing from the cloud. A similar kind of an aspect is what you have when it comes to multimedia playback as well. See, rendering a video in a remote session from over the cloud is something which is going to be really tedious, you know. Why tedious? Because it might buffer, it might bring down my experience, the pixelation or the resolution might not get adjusted clearly, etc. So the multimedia playback earlier that was there on WVD was something which used to consume a lot of my compute, my CPU on the instance, at the same time giving me a completely distorted video experience. Thanks to the enhanced remote display driver integrated with the GPU components that have been implemented in the design of WVD, the accessibility now has changed to something like this, wherein your CPU consumption drastically comes down and is maintained below 10. at the same time giving you a performance like never before, as if you are playing the video on your local device itself. So the processing is also controlled, the user experience is also not compromised, and at the same time, the services that you are accessing are also something which are going to be as good as a local machine. So these are typically the reasons why the adoption of Windows Virtual Desktop becomes the need of the hour, providing you the best possible security and compliance in place, irrespective whether you are hosting the data within a data center in your region or outside your region, making sure all your information is lying on premise, still being accessed directly from the cloud, and when the session is released, your information securely is left in the on-prem back, giving you the accessibility over a universal platform of operating systems and devices, including thin clients, leveraging you to use your on-prem and existing Microsoft 365 licenses as well, making sure your cost factor comes down, and lastly, giving you the best of experience of using unified communication, audio video services, hardware collaboration to give you the best of the experience on a virtualized session. This is all completely achieved because of Microsoft's global network, which is currently the largest across any cloud provider today in the world, having 54 regions in Azure serving more than 146 countries, having 130,000 plus miles of fibers and subsea cables, which is like no other cloud provider, and having more number of content delivery network, that is CDN endpoints in the cloud, again, like no other cloud provider. While you want to implement WVD, there will be a couple of questions simply where you can start with. What are the users accessing? Who are those users? And how are they actually planning to access those resources? This will help you to determine the type of license that you would want to assign to those users. So this typically, guys, brings us to an end of a short walkthrough on Windows Virtual Desktop. There is a lot more to discuss in the technical depth of how WVD can enhance the accessibility in your environment. Probably we can get in touch one-on-one whenever required to have a short POC of that particular product done for your better understanding and for you to have a complete picture of how exactly the experience of a WVD session would look like. So that's all from my side as a quick walkthrough, guys. I would now want to have questions from your side, which we can answer and have an even better clarity on WVD. So I think, Vishnu sir, we can wind up. And if there is anything, you can please feel free to just get in touch with me, and we can have the issues or any kind of a response handled, and we can help them in any manner we can. All the customers over here who would want to explore WVD as a solution.
Sure, Ronak. Thank you very much for your time and the session, and thank you everyone for joining this session. And we'll reach out to you just in case if you would like to know more about this. You got our email address in the webinar invite. You can reach out to us as well at any point of time, and we can have a one-to-one technical session in deep dive.
I hope it was an informative session for all of you guys. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much. Stay safe and have a happy weekend. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Ronak. Thank you, Vishnu.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day, guys. Bye bye.